Millionaire underestimated a delivery girl, but discovered a legal genius and fell in love. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started with today's story. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in downtown New York. The city was busy as usual, with people hustling through the wet streets, umbrellas in hand, trying to make it to their next appointment. Among the crowd was Emma, a delivery girl, navigating her way through the bustling sidewalk with a stack of hot coffee cups carefully balanced in her hands. She was no stranger to the pressure of rushing between orders, but today was different. Her delivery had taken her to a fancy law office, a place where she'd never imagined stepping foot. She had always felt out of place in such luxurious surroundings. She was just a girl who worked long hours, earning enough to get by, but never quite feeling like she belonged in a world of polished suits and expensive accessories. As she walked into the building's lobby, her eyes widened at the gleaming marble floors and the elegant art pieces on the walls. She was momentarily distracted, unsure of where to go, until a voice from behind interrupted her thoughts. "Hey, are you lost?" It was a man, tall and sharply dressed, standing by the elevator. His suit was pristine, his tie perfectly knotted. He had the kind of face that belonged on the cover of a magazine. Emma blinked, flustered by his sudden appearance. No, I'm just here for the coffee delivery," she said, offering him a small smile, though she couldn't hide the nervousness in her voice. The man raised an eyebrow, looking her up and down with an air of indifference, as if her presence was just another part of his day. "I see. Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate your service." He then turned his attention back to his phone, dismissing her without a second glance. Emma, though embarrassed, shrugged it off and continued on her way, finding the office she was supposed to deliver to. She left the building with a feeling of unease, her mind replaying the encounter with the man in the elevator. Why had he seemed so uninterested? But what she didn't know was that she had just met Liam Parker, the very man who was about to change her life. Liam had been part of the company's legal team for years, a powerful figure in the world of corporate law. However, despite his success, he had recently been feeling disconnected from the world around him. He had grown tired of the business meetings, the endless transactions, and the coldness of his luxurious lifestyle. He longed for something real, something genuine, but he hadn't quite realized that yet. Later that day, Liam received a call from his superior. They were in need of someone to assist with a complex legal case, but there was a catch. He needed someone who could think outside the box, someone with a fresh perspective. It was then that he remembered Emma, the delivery girl who had seemed so out of place in his world, yet had something about her that intrigued him. He decided to reach out to her, not knowing what he was about to discover. Emma, meanwhile, was shocked when she received the call from Liam's office. She was taken aback, unsure of why someone so important would want to speak with her. He offered her a chance to work with him, not as a delivery girl, but as a legal consultant. Emma was skeptical, but after much thought, she agreed. Little did she know, this was the beginning of a journey that would not only change her career, but also her life in ways she never imagined. Emma had never expected that one simple phone call would lead her to a completely different world. She sat at the small desk in her cramped apartment, staring at the glowing screen of her phone as the words from Liam's office echoed in her mind. He had offered her a chance to help with a legal case, something completely out of her comfort zone. At first, she thought it was a mistake, a wrong number, or even a prank. After all, why would someone like him, a man who practically oozed wealth and power, want to work with someone like her, a delivery girl with no formal education or experience in law? But after some thought, and knowing how much she needed to turn her life around, she decided to take the chance. She couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip by. It felt like a dream, but Emma was used to dreams being just that, dreams. She never imagined they could come true. When she walked into the office the next day, she felt like an outsider. The shiny, glass doors of the law firm felt like a barrier she didn't belong behind. Her nerves were running high as she stepped into the sleek building, her sneakers clicking against the marble floor. She barely had time to take in her surroundings before a tall woman with a clipboard greeted her. You must be Emma. Mr. Parker is expecting you. The woman led her to an office at the end of a long hallway, and as they approached, Emma could see Liam Parker sitting behind a large, polished desk. He looked just as he had when they first met. The sharp suit, the cool demeanor, his dark hair perfectly styled. There was a moment of silence as he looked up at her. For a brief second, Emma felt the urge to run. She was just a delivery girl. What was she doing here? Emma, glad you could make it, Liam said, his voice smooth and confident. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. Emma hesitated for a moment before taking a seat. She felt out of place in the pristine office, surrounded by bookshelves filled with legal texts and awards on the walls. Everything about it screamed success, while she felt like a fish out of water. I know this is a bit unorthodox, Liam continued, breaking the silence. But we have a complex legal case on our hands, and I believe you can help. Emma blinked in surprise. Me? She asked. But I don't know anything about law. Liam smiled slightly. I'm aware of your background, Emma. But I've also heard about your ability to solve problems creatively. That's exactly what we need. You see, legal cases aren't always about knowledge of the law. Sometimes, they're about thinking outside the box. And I think you're the perfect person for the job. Emma was still in shock, trying to wrap her head around the idea that Liam Parker, a man who worked in high-powered law, was asking her, a girl with no legal training, to help him solve a case. I don't know, she said, her voice wavering. I mean, I can try, but I don't think I'm the right person. I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't believe you could do it, Liam said, his tone firm but encouraging. Besides, you'll have my full support. We'll work together, and I'll make sure you have everything you need. Emma could feel the weight of his words settling in her chest. This was real. This could change everything for her. She took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, I'll give it a try. And just like that, Emma was no longer just a delivery girl. She was part of something much bigger, something that could change the course of her life forever. As the days passed, Emma found herself diving into the case with a newfound sense of purpose. She quickly realized that Liam's faith in her wasn't misplaced. She had an uncanny ability to see angles others missed, to spot details that were easily overlooked. Slowly but surely, she became an integral part of the team, gaining confidence with each breakthrough. And as they worked together, Emma began to see a side of Liam that she hadn't expected, one that was kind, patient, and surprisingly down-to-earth. He wasn't the cold, distant businessman she had first imagined. He was real, and he was starting to see her for who she really was, not just the delivery girl he had once underestimated. As the days passed, Emma's confidence continued to grow. She found herself spending more and more time in Liam's office, working together on the case, and slowly but surely, she was proving herself to be more than just the delivery girl he once underestimated. Her mind, once preoccupied with survival and the daily grind of her job, was now focused on solving real legal problems. She had always been resourceful, but this was something entirely different. Every morning, she would arrive at Liam's office, coffee in hand, and dive into the piles of legal documents that had once seemed so daunting. With each passing day, she began to unravel the complexities of the case, and her intuition led her to insights that others had missed. She was beginning to see the law not just as a series of rules, but as a way to right wrongs and make a real difference. Liam, who had initially seen her as an outsider, now looked at her with a newfound respect. He could see the way her eyes lit up when she discovered a crucial piece of information, the way her passion for solving problems had taken hold of her. What started as a business arrangement was slowly evolving into something more. As they worked late one evening, Emma was poring over some documents when she looked up to find Liam watching her from across the room. There was something different in his gaze, something more personal. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was a warmth there that hadn't been there before. You're really good at this, you know, Liam said, his voice soft but genuine. Emma smiled, though she tried to hide the nervous flutter in her chest. Thanks. I'm just doing my best. Liam leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. It's more than that. You've got a natural talent for this. You've got the kind of mind that can look at a problem and find a solution where others see only obstacles. Emma looked down at her hands, unsure of how to respond. She had never received compliments like this before, especially from someone like Liam, who had the world at his feet. I never thought I could do something like this, she admitted, her voice quiet. I've always just gotten by, you know? I never thought I'd be good enough for something like this. Liam's expression softened, and he pushed himself out of his chair to stand beside her. Emma, you're more than good enough. You're brilliant. Don't sell yourself short. The sincerity in his voice sent a wave of warmth through her. It was the first time she felt truly seen, not just for her past, but for the person she was becoming. And for the first time, Emma began to wonder if this wasn't just about the case anymore. As the weeks went on, their partnership continued to grow. They spent countless hours together, talking late into the night, brainstorming ideas, and working through every detail of the case. In those quiet moments, Emma started to see Liam in a new light. He wasn't just the millionaire lawyer who had hired her for his case. He was a man who had his own struggles, his own doubts, and despite his wealth, he was just as vulnerable as anyone else. The connection between them grew stronger, but both were hesitant to acknowledge it. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between them, but she didn't want to make things complicated. She had been hired for a job, and that's what she needed to focus on. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore the way Liam's presence made her feel. One afternoon, as they sat across from each other in his office, Emma could feel the tension building in the air. Liam was looking at her differently, his eyes soft and thoughtful, and for the first time, Emma felt a spark of something she hadn't expected. She had to admit it, she was beginning to fall for him. But could a girl like her ever have a chance with someone like him? She wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. The more she worked with him, the more she realized just how much she had to offer. Liam wasn't the only one who had underestimated her. And now, as their partnership deepened, she was starting to see just how much more there was to her than she had ever realized. As the weeks continued to pass, Emma found herself more and more invested in both the case and the man who had given her this chance. The connection between her and Liam grew stronger, though neither of them dared to address the elephant in the room. They were partners in business, after all, and that's how it needed to stay. But every time their eyes met, Emma could feel a tension that was hard to ignore. One evening, after a long day of working on the case, they sat across from each other in the office. The city skyline outside the window was bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, casting a peaceful glow over the room. Emma stretched her arms, feeling the weight of the day settle into her shoulders. Liam, noticing her fatigue, leaned back in his chair. "You've been working hard," he said, his tone softer than usual. "You deserve a break." Emma smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm fine," she said quickly, but Liam's gaze didn't leave her. There was something about the way he looked at her that made her feel as if he could see right through her, as if he could read every unspoken thought and emotion. It was unsettling, but at the same time, it made her feel understood in a way she never had before. "You know," Liam said, breaking the silence, "I never expected this from you." Emma looked up at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" I never expected you to be so good at this," he explained, gesturing toward the legal documents they had been working on. "You've been an invaluable part of this case, Emma. I didn't think someone like you, no offense, would have such a strong grasp on this." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had always felt like an outsider, never quite fitting in with the people who surrounded her. But hearing Liam acknowledge her talent, her intellect, made her feel like she was finally being seen for who she truly was. "Thanks," she said quietly, looking down at the table, trying to hide the blush creeping up her neck. "But I'm just doing what I can." Liam stood up and walked over to her, his presence filling the space between them. "You're doing more than that. You're making a real difference, Emma. I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you until now." Emma's breath caught in her throat. There was a sincerity in his words that made her heart race. She couldn't deny the feelings that had been building between them, but she wasn't sure what to do with them. Was this just professional admiration, or was there something more? Before she could respond, Liam's phone rang, breaking the moment. He glanced at the screen and sighed, his expression shifting back to his usual businesslike demeanor. "Sorry, I have to take this," he said, turning away. Emma nodded, forcing a smile as she stood up to grab her bag. She knew she needed to leave before she made things more complicated than they already were. But just as she reached the door, Liam's voice stopped her. "Emma, wait." She turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "I know this may not be the right time, but I just want to say, I'm really glad we started working together. You've changed the way I look at things." Emma's mind raced as she stood there, unsure of what to say. She was afraid to admit that she felt the same way. Instead, she simply nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "I'm glad too," she whispered before quickly exiting the room. As she stepped into the elevator, Emma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had spent so much of her life feeling invisible, but with Liam, for the first time, she felt like she mattered. The journey they were on together had only just begun, and Emma wasn't sure where it would lead. But one thing was clear: she was no longer the girl she used to be. And maybe, just maybe, the man who had once underestimated her had finally begun to see her for the person she had always known herself to be. The following week, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that lingered after her last conversation with Liam. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the words he had said, and more importantly, the way he had looked at her. His compliment had left a mark, and for the first time, Emma began to wonder if there was more between them than just their professional connection. She arrived at Liam's office early that morning, trying to focus on the case, but her thoughts kept drifting back to their last conversation. Was it possible that he saw her as something more than just a colleague? She had never allowed herself to entertain thoughts like this before. It wasn't that she didn't find him attractive, but she had always been so focused on surviving and proving herself that the idea of a relationship had never crossed her mind. When she entered the office, she found Liam already at his desk, his brow furrowed in concentration as he reviewed some legal documents. The sight of him in his sharp suit, surrounded by the weight of his successful career, only made Emma feel more out of place. But then he looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, all of her doubts seemed to fade away. "Good morning, Emma," Liam said, his voice warm. "Ready to dive into today's work?" Emma nodded, but her voice faltered slightly as she replied, "Of course." As she sat down at the table across from him, Emma felt the tension between them again. Only this time, it felt stronger. She couldn't ignore the way her heart seemed to beat faster whenever he was near. She had to focus, she told herself. She was here for a reason. They had a job to do. They spent the next few hours working together, the rhythm of their collaboration becoming more seamless with each passing day. But despite their growing professional partnership, there was still a palpable distance between them, one that neither of them knew how to bridge. Then, around noon, everything changed. They were in the middle of a meeting with a client when Liam's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, his expression changing in an instant. "I need to take this," he said, standing up and stepping out of the room. Emma couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment, though she quickly dismissed it. She focused on the task at hand, speaking with the client about the details of their case. It wasn't until Liam returned, looking more serious than usual, that she noticed something was off. "What happened?" Emma asked, her concern evident. Liam hesitated before answering. "That was my brother," he said. "There's been a problem with the case, and we need to move quickly to fix it." Emma nodded, sensing the weight of the situation. "What do we need to do?" she asked, her voice steady. Liam gave her a look of appreciation, and for the first time, she saw him as someone who trusted her, not just as a colleague, but as a person. "I'm glad you're here, Emma," he said. "We'll need to rework some of the strategy, but I believe you're the key to making this work." The words struck her harder than she expected. In that moment, Emma realized that Liam wasn't just depending on her professional skills. He was beginning to depend on her as a person, and that was something she wasn't sure she was ready for. As they worked late into the evening, reworking the case, Emma felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known before. But there was also a growing awareness that the relationship between her and Liam had changed. She could feel it in the way he looked at her, the way their conversations went beyond just the case. There was a connection there, one that neither of them could deny anymore. And as she left his office that night, her heart heavy with the uncertainty of what was to come, Emma couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of something far beyond just solving a legal case. As the case continued to evolve, so did the dynamic between Emma and Liam. They spent more time together, not just solving legal problems, but also sharing moments that went beyond professional interaction. Emma had always been cautious, protective of her heart, especially when it came to someone like Liam. But she couldn't deny the way he made her feel important, valued, and more alive than she had in years. It was strange to her how quickly things had changed. One day, as they were wrapping up another long session in the office, Liam paused, looking at Emma with a soft expression. I was thinking, he began, his voice quiet. We've been working so hard on this case, and I know it's not over yet, but maybe we should take a break. Just for a little while. Emma blinked, surprised by the suggestion. Take a break? You mean, like a vacation? He nodded, though it wasn't quite what she had expected. I've got a place upstate. It's quiet, peaceful. We could go there, clear our heads, and come back ready to tackle the next step. Emma hesitated, unsure of what to make of it. It wasn't just the idea of taking a break. It was the idea of spending time with Liam outside of work, away from the world they had created in the office. She had always prided herself on keeping her personal life separate from her work life. But with him, it felt like the lines were beginning to blur. I don't know, she said finally, looking down at her hands. What if it's a bad idea? I mean, we've been working together, but outside of this. I don't know. Liam smiled gently, sensing her hesitation. It's not a date, Emma. It's just a chance to unwind. We've been under a lot of pressure lately, and I think we both could use a break from all of this. Emma bit her lip, thinking it over. She was tempted, more than she cared to admit. The thought of getting away, of seeing Liam in a different light, was appealing, but the fear of making things awkward lingered in the back of her mind. Okay, she said finally, her voice a little uncertain. I'll go, but just to clear my head. Nothing more, nothing less. Liam's face softened, his eyes filled with gratitude. I promise, it's just to relax, he said, his voice sincere. And so, a few days later, they found themselves on the road, driving to Liam's secluded home upstate. The journey was quiet at first, neither of them knowing quite how to act outside the office. But as the miles stretched on, the tension began to ease. The scenery outside the car window changed from the urban sprawl of the city to the rolling hills and peaceful forests of the countryside. The air felt fresher, the weight of their usual responsibilities momentarily forgotten. When they arrived at Liam's house, it was just as peaceful as he had promised, set on a large piece of land, with a beautiful view of the woods. The home was simple yet elegant, the kind of place that felt like a sanctuary away from the chaos of the world. Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her, something she hadn't realized she needed. They spent the evening sitting outside on the porch, drinking wine and watching the stars. It felt surreal, like they had stepped out of their everyday lives and into something else entirely. This is nice, Emma said quietly, her gaze fixed on the sky. I haven't done anything like this in a long time. Liam looked over at her, his expression unreadable. I'm glad you're here, he said, his voice low. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the rustling of the leaves in the breeze and the occasional chirp of a distant cricket. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt at peace. There were no cases to solve, no deadlines looming. Just the two of them, in the quiet of the night. It wasn't a romantic moment, at least, not in the traditional sense, but there was something about it that made Emma's heart race. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the longer she stayed there, the more she realized that this was no longer just about the case. It was about them, and she wasn't sure where it was headed, but for the first time, Emma was willing to find out. The next morning, after a peaceful night spent on the porch, Emma and Liam woke up to the soft sounds of nature around Liam's house. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the landscape. Emma stretched, feeling a sense of tranquility that she hadn't realized she needed. She hadn't thought about the case, the office, or even the stresses of her life back in the city. It felt like a breath of fresh air. Liam, noticing her change in demeanor, smiled as he made coffee in the kitchen. I hope you slept well, he said, handing her a cup. This place does wonders for clearing your mind. Emma took the coffee and nodded. It really does, she replied, her voice quieter than usual. She wasn't sure why, but there was something about this moment, about being with Liam in such a peaceful setting, that made her feel more connected to him than she had before. They spent the morning walking around the property, talking about everything and nothing. There were no deadlines, no pressures, just the open sky and the gentle rustling of leaves in the trees. For the first time, Emma allowed herself to truly relax, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. But as they walked through a small garden at the back of the house, Liam's tone shifted, becoming more serious. Emma, he started, his voice steady but heavy. There's something I need to tell you. Emma stopped walking and turned to face him, suddenly feeling a tightness in her chest. What is it? Liam took a deep breath, clearly hesitant. I know we've been working together for a while now, and I've come to really appreciate you, your skills, your intelligence, and well, everything about you. But there's something more I've been thinking about. Something I've been trying to ignore. Emma's heart began to race. She wasn't sure what he was getting at, but she could feel the weight of his words pressing on her. Liam, what do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam took a step closer to her, his gaze softening. I mean, I've been starting to feel something for you, Emma. Something more than just professional respect. I've tried to push it away, but I can't ignore it anymore. I know it's complicated, but I need you to know. Emma stood there, stunned. She had felt it too, but hearing it from him made it all the more real. Her thoughts swirled, unsure of how to process everything. She had spent so much of her life being practical, focused on what was necessary. But here, in this moment, with Liam standing in front of her, everything seemed different. Liam, I don't know what to say, she said quietly, her voice trembling. This is unexpected. I know, Liam replied, his expression earnest. And I don't want to make things awkward between us, especially with everything we're working on. But I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I care about you, Emma, more than I've allowed myself to admit. Emma took a step back, her mind racing. She wasn't sure how to respond, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about them. She had never expected to find herself in this position, especially with someone like Liam. She had spent so many years protecting herself, building walls to keep people out. But Liam had slowly begun to tear those walls down, and now she was standing at a crossroads. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Emma said, her voice quiet but steady. I've never been good at letting people in, and I don't want to complicate things with work. Liam nodded, his expression softening. I understand. I don't want to rush you. I just needed to be honest with you. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken emotions. Emma wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing. Things were changing, and she couldn't deny that the feelings between them were real. After a moment, Emma took a deep breath. Let's just take this one step at a time, she said. I'm not sure where this is going, but we'll figure it out. Liam smiled, a mix of relief and understanding in his eyes. One step at a time, he echoed. And in that moment, Emma felt something shift within her. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. They didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, Emma felt ready to explore what lay ahead, both in the case and in her relationship with Liam. As the days passed, Emma and Liam continued to work together, their connection growing stronger with each passing moment. They were still navigating the delicate balance between their professional relationship and the undeniable feelings that had begun to develop between them. It was clear that they were no longer just colleagues, but neither of them was ready to admit what was happening. The case they had been working on was nearing its final stages. And with it, the pressure was mounting. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, Emma sat in Liam's office, reviewing the final documents before the big presentation. She was focused, but there was a gnawing feeling in her chest that she couldn't ignore. She glanced up at Liam, who was pacing back and forth, clearly deep in thought. Hey, she called out softly, breaking his concentration. Liam stopped and looked at her, his expression weary but warm. Yeah, he asked. Emma hesitated for a moment before speaking. I know we've been pushing through this case, but I've been thinking. This is almost over, and I don't know what comes next. The words hung in the air between them. It wasn't just about the case anymore. Emma had always been focused on the task at hand, but now she was wondering what would happen when everything was done. Would their connection fade, or would they find a way to navigate the personal feelings that had blossomed? Liam walked over to her, his usual confidence replaced with a vulnerability that Emma wasn't used to seeing. I know exactly what you mean, he said, his voice quieter than usual. I've been thinking about the same thing. We've come so far together, but I'm not sure where we go from here. Emma's heart skipped a beat at his words. For a moment, she felt as though they were on the same page, as if the walls they had built around their emotions were starting to crumble. I don't want this to just end when the case is over, she said softly. But I also don't want to complicate things. What if this is just a temporary thing? What if we're both caught up in the excitement of the work, and we're not really seeing things clearly? Liam looked at her, his expression filled with understanding. I don't think it's temporary, Emma. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm not willing to let it go. But I also don't want to rush into anything. I want to take things one step at a time. Emma nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She didn't have all the answers, but hearing Liam say the words she had been afraid to admit made her feel like they were finally on the same page. One step at a time, she repeated, a small smile tugging at her lips. I can do that. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation for the final presentation. Emma and Liam worked tirelessly, each of them putting in long hours to ensure everything was perfect. But despite the stress of the case, they found small moments of connection, shared glances, quiet smiles, and a growing sense of trust that neither of them could deny. When the day of the presentation finally arrived, Emma stood by Liam's side as they faced the boardroom full of clients. The tension in the room was palpable, but Emma felt surprisingly calm. She had never been this confident before, and she knew that it wasn't just because of the case. It was because she had Liam by her side. As they presented their case, Emma could feel Liam's support every step of the way. He had always believed in her, but now, she realized just how much he trusted her. When the presentation was over, and the clients had signed the deal, Liam turned to her with a look of pride in his eyes. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with quiet excitement. Emma smiled, feeling a surge of accomplishment. "We did." But as they stood there in the aftermath of their success, Emma realized something. This wasn't just about winning the case. It was about the connection they had built, the trust they had forged. She didn't know where this would go, but for the first time, she was ready to find out. She looked at Liam, and without a word, they both knew. They had come a long way, and no matter what the future held, they were in it together. The weeks that followed the successful presentation felt like a whirlwind. The case was officially closed, the clients were satisfied, and Emma and Liam found themselves at a crossroads once again. They had been working side by side for so long, their professional relationship blossoming into something deeper, something more personal. Yet, despite all the success, neither of them had fully addressed what had grown between them. The tension, the unspoken words, hung in the air. Emma knew it was time. As they sat in the office late one evening, the silence between them seemed heavier than usual. Liam was staring at his laptop screen, his usual focus unwavering, but Emma could see the subtle tension in his posture. It was now or never. "Liam," she began, her voice soft but steady. "We've both been avoiding this, haven't we?" Liam looked up from his laptop, his gaze meeting hers. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then he nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Yeah, I guess we have." Emma took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. The case, us, where this is going." She paused, searching for the right words. "I don't want to let this go, Liam. What we've built, what we've started, it's real. But I can't keep pretending that I'm not feeling something more." Liam stood up and walked over to her, his expression intense but tender. "I felt the same way, Emma. From the very beginning, I knew this wasn't just about the case anymore. It's about us. And I don't want to let this slip away either." The weight of his words hit Emma like a wave, and for a brief moment, everything else in the world seemed to disappear. It wasn't just a professional connection anymore. It was something deeper, something real, and something they had both been too afraid to acknowledge until now. Liam reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "I know this isn't simple, and I know we have a lot to figure out," he said quietly. "But I'm willing to take that step with you. I don't have all the answers, but I know I don't want to do this without you." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "One step at a time, right?" she said, echoing his words from earlier. "We'll figure it out." Liam nodded, his eyes filled with sincerity. One step at a time. And just like that, the walls that had separated them for so long began to crumble. They had both been afraid of what would happen if they gave in to the feelings that had been growing between them, but now, there was no turning back. They were ready to face whatever the future held, together. The next few months were a journey of rediscovery for both of them. They continued to work together, tackling new challenges, but now their connection was more than just professional. It was personal. They spent weekends exploring new places, having long conversations about their hopes and dreams, and learning to trust each other in ways they never had before. And then, one evening, after a quiet dinner at Liam's apartment, he took Emma's hand and looked into her eyes. "I don't know where we're going, but I do know one thing," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I want you by my side, no matter what." Emma's heart skipped a beat, and without hesitation, she smiled. "I'm right here," she said, her voice steady and full of certainty. "I'm not going anywhere." Liam leaned in, his lips brushing hers in a soft, lingering kiss. It wasn't the beginning of a fairy tale, but it was the start of something real, something beautiful. They didn't have all the answers, and there were still challenges ahead. But they knew one thing for sure: they had each other. And that was enough. Together, they had found not just success in their work, but the kind of love that made everything else seem possible. They didn't need to know what the future would bring. As long as they had each other, they were ready to face it, one step at a time. Millionaire stories have always captivated audiences, especially when they explore the complex dynamics between the rich and the everyday people they encounter. In this tale, a millionaire underestimates a delivery girl, but soon discovers that she is a legal genius, completely changing the course of their professional relationship and their lives. As they work together on a high-stakes case, the bond between them grows stronger, and what begins as a business partnership eventually blossoms into something much deeper. The evolution of their connection offers a unique perspective on how success, trust, and love can intertwine, making it a compelling addition to the world of millionaire stories. This journey shows that no matter how different their worlds seem, two people can still find common ground, overcoming challenges and embracing a future together. The story of this millionaire and the delivery girl is a testament to the power of perseverance, self-discovery, and love. As the plot unfolds, their shared experiences lead to a realization that they are more than just business partners. They are two people who, despite their differences, have built something real. If you enjoy millionaire stories that go beyond wealth and success, this narrative will leave you with a sense of hope and inspiration. Their story is not just about business. It's about the unexpected connections that can change lives forever. Through their journey, they show that even the most improbable of relationships can lead to profound transformation, proving that true success isn't just about money, but about finding someone who sees you for who you truly are.